On sait de quoi, and welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is Belgian French for what do we say to each other, which is itself apparently shorthand for keeping someone updated about something, which is what we do for you, the listener. I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
I'm good. I'm wondering if eventually, whatever website you find, like internationalidiomfinder.org or whatever it is, I wonder if eventually you're going to run out of perfect idioms. This week was a bit of a stretch, but
hey,
you've been doing
not a lot of Belgian French out there. Okay,
that's true. That's fair.
Also joining us, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
Not bad. I'm worried that soon we're just going to be forced into like using idioms that are regionally hyper offensive. Like Drew's gonna be like, so here's a fun little saying about the Flemish, and it'll be like, uh-oh.
We don't want no Flemish beef on this podcast. We have enough beef going on already.
No Flemish blemishes. If you're new to this podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you are new to Formula One itself, we recommend listening to our preseason primer episode, which assumes no prior F1 knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. So if you'd like to go back and listen to that, it's episode 257. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/shiftf1, where every month we release an ad-free version of the podcast, along with bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for our patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/shiftf1 or click the link in the show notes. What do we have going on this month, Denny?
We just last week posted the second of our two podcasts reviewing the anime Overtake, which we spoilers we all three of us really enjoyed on both Patreon exclusive podcasts. So yes, that's what we have. We had another anime moment. This happens every once in a while. Sometimes it's Redline. Sometimes it's Overtake. Sometimes it's Pixar's Cars, which is, somewhat Western anime.
Listen, it's racing.
It's racing. It works. It just about makes it within the Venn diagram. Do we know what we're going to do next month? Do we have any in the chamber?
We have a whole document full of ideas, but we don't have one selected yet. Maybe we do a poll? You want to do a poll?
We could do a poll.
We could do
That'd
Unchained.
Which one's Unchained?
We could do Unchained.
Is that the bicycling one? Man, we are two wheels
and no motor, except
the
human spirit and human muscle.
And cars, whenever they're doing one of those, we're replacing the wheels, but you're still moving things.
That's true. There's a lot of cars involved.
That is true. I watched it recently, and the first 4 episodes are actually a pretty great arc.
Oh, okay.
So we could do that. And
how many episodes are there?
There's like 2 seasons. I think it's 10 per season.
Okay. You know, there's not that much doping in F1. I've just realized. There's no
as far as we know.
As far as we know.
I mean, our equivalent is aliasing the fuel, fuel flow rate.
Yeah.
And then, obviously in the 70s, 80s, I'm sure that the drivers were on more stuff.
Absolutely.
But whether it was enhancing it all,
that's a good point.
Harder to say.
Yes. It's like the Nick Diaz problem of he would always be stoned for his fights, but whether or not that was a help or a hindrance was really up to the gods. Yes, James Hunt, I'm sure, was enjoying some of that, talcum powder back in his day. Much like our amazing title sponsors, Get Rich or Die Ryan, Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, TelemetryDeck.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foote, Abdullah Al-Thani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us Podcast, Bunny Fiend, Snigs, Alex Goucher, Max Voltar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, William Rumpf, Irvine Clinical Research knows where to get it, Lachlan the Madden Man, Samurai Love Story, and of course, Jason Kelly. Thank you all so much for your incredible support. Sorry, I just outed you all as drug fiends.
And Jason making a comeback again.
I'll
2
stop
episodes in a row.
I'll stop it now. We don't need. Shame. Did you watch the Olympics opening ceremony? It's a shame David Cage didn't get a shout out.
Yeah, which is surprising because they had opportunity.
They had Assassin's Creed. They had some Ubisoft stuff going on, running along the rooftops.
Did anyone watch the entire thing on Earth? Any human being?
It was so long and weirdly paced and just odd and wet that it was kind of like watching the first drunken rehearsal of a Eurovision halftime show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the whole, like I love that they went for it. I get the idea. Let's use Paris as the stage. I think that's a great idea. Paris was kind of like rejuvenated in the 1800s for that reason, for it to be a stage. But I don't know. Also, I've seen Gojira live twice, and I listen to their music relatively often. I had no idea they were French until I saw them pop up, and then I wasn't even sure if they were French because earlier they had Lady Gaga, and she's not French. I don't think. Is she French?
Not as far as I know.
Lady Gaga? No, I don't think so. My real question, though, where was the Phoenix?
Oh, was he? He was snubbed again.
He was.
He was shopping for new planes.
Is he technically Swiss? I don't know.
He's always said Swiss-born French driver is how I see it every time. So I think he is French.
It's like the from France by way of Switzerland. He'd be called out if he was a boxer, but he's not. He's not a boxer. He's a race car
not even
driver.
human.
He's not anymore. Phoenix in the Flames, and a cook and a chef, great chef, as you have to be if you're French. I hear.
Well, let's cook us up some spa, shall we?
Let's do it.
Last race ahead of the traditional Formula One summer break. We've got a gap here before we come back.
We've another gap too. We've this weird because they moved Azerbaijan, right? So we've a weird little October gap as well. It's a like a 3-week by accident gap.
Weird little gaps, i.e., what F1 kind of used to be like.
Yes, you're right. That's absolutely true. Where a 3-week gap was relatively normal.
Yeah.
In days of yore.
Yeah, the next Grand Prix will be August 25th, the Dutch Grand Prix. And then you're right, we've got a gap from September 22nd to October 20th between Singapore and the United States Grand Prix. So
yeah.
Buckle up. But don't worry, we will have not only Patreon content, but a pre-race for the Dutch Grand Prix before it happens. So we'll keep you... company, at least a little bit. But let's get to the race at hand. Qualifying-wise, a damp track throughout, which made things a little exciting.
Yeah.
As did Verstappen's engine penalty. So we knew going into qualifying that Verstappen was going to take a 10-place grid penalty for using too many engine parts. You only get so many per season, and he has already exceeded that limit. He took the fastest time in qualifying, but will start the race in 11th after those penalties. Inheriting pole position, Charles Leclerc. Somewhat surprised to hear him say it. And in second place, Verstappen's teammate. Made it into Q3, did Sergio Perez, by 0.003 of a second.
Just about.
Nearly knocked out by Alex Albon. But yes, Perez will start second. Then Hamilton. And then the first of the McLarens who have been on a tear, Lando Norris. Beside him is Oscar Piastri. Then we've got Russell in 6th, Sainz in 7th. Only 2 drivers starting on the hard tire, everybody else on medium. And then we've got Ricciardo on the softs down in 13th place. But in 8th place, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Ocon in 9th, and Alex Albon starting 10th. Then we've got Verstappen after that penalty down in 11th. Gasly in 12th, Ricciardo in 13th on those soft tires, Bottas in 14th, Lance Stroll in 15th. He crashed in free practice 3. Mechanics managed to fix the car for qualifying, which I think was aided by a red flag. It was first brought out for Stroll and then for the track being too wet. But you can see this on the highlights video on the F1 YouTube channel. a karting race was happening adjacent to the track, and it kept going during the race.
Oh, that's great.
And so in the video, you can hear the F1 TV crew commentating on that race.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Oh, I missed that. That's great.
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Excellent.
16th lines up Hulkenberg, and then Magnussen, Sargent, Zhou, the other driver on hard tires, and Tsunoda, who was also penalized quite heavily, even more heavily, required to start from the back of the grid. Technically, he had, I think, 60 grid place penalty points.
God, really?
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
you might as well be hung for a sheep as a lamb.
Yeah. And then Zhou was also penalized 3 places for impeding Verstappen during qualifying in Q1, but I think he also qualified in 19th place and was not did not get enough penalty places to put himself behind Tsunoda. So yeah, penalties abound. A little bit of the mixing of the grid with Verstappen down there in 11th, and that's how the final race of the first half of the season will start. Danny, do you want to take us through it?
Yeah, sure. Leclerc got a great start. Perez really instantly attacked Hamilton, just tried to pull over to the right to try and cut him off. Hamilton did get a better start, though. Sort of a funny one, this track, because the option of around the outside on this first turn is not amazing, as Lando Norris will let you know. He gobbled a little bit too much of the gravel on his exit of the turn. Perez and Hamilton go basically side by side, but Hamilton's clearly got more pace, it seems like, or he could attack the corner a bit more naturally than having to swing around the outside like Perez did. And Norris comes back onto the track, but he's overtaken by Russell and Sainz, but honestly somehow manages to have it so that no one else overtakes him. I think he probably could have. He was a bit lucky, actually, not to get gobbled up a little bit more there. Hamilton and Perez, though, going down to the bottom of Eau Rouge, that's a real 2-1 does not go situation. Hamilton did get ahead of Perez and shoots up to the top of Radion in second place. Perez, though, is sort of, queued him up. He's got a good line through Eau Rouge and Radion, and by the time they get up to the straight, he is attempting to try and get a run on Hamilton. He doesn't quite have the pace to pull it off, though. So as they approach turn 4, I'm guessing that is, you have Leclerc out in front with Hamilton behind him, and Perez in third, with then it would be Oscar Piastri in fourth, and then is it Russell, Sainz, Lando?
Yeah, so Russell tries to go around the outside of Piastri there, but has to bail off track. Rejoins in the same position, so doesn't have to give anything back. And then just before the end of lap 1, Verstappen, who has made up a number of places, gets around Alex Albon into the final chicane for 9th place, having, I think it was 2 places that he had gained on the opening lap.
And this is sort of his thing. This is maybe the 3rd or 4th race season in a row where he has taken his penalty at Spa for the new engine, because they know it's a track that the Red Bull does decent at and has the ability to get some overtakes, and he has managed to win the race from that position before. So, obviously this is mid-stage 2024 Red Bull car, so it doesn't exactly have that much of a gap over everyone else. But
I still believed. I really did think, like, going into this, I was like, well, he's in P11, but like the last few years, the Red Bull has been inevitable, moving up the field. But the other thing that surprised me here, because like the Red Bull, like its performance is so strong, but also it's like been less draggy significantly in recent years. I also expected those same factors to really favor the McLaren, for that to be sort of a car that just tore through the field using the Kemmel straight. I was surprised by just how differently Spa raced this year than I was than we've seen lately.
Yeah, and maybe there is something to be said about the conditions of the track. It was a dry race. About half of the track surface had been redone, and we will get to how that may have tripped up some teams. But until then, like you said, Danny, Charles Leclerc is in first, but not for long.
Not for long.
Lap 3, he has not pulled away from Hamilton. And as he and Hamilton head through Eau Rouge, Hamilton's right on his gearbox. And with the aid of DRS, Hamilton gets around Leclerc before the corner, taking the lead with apparent ease.
Yeah, kind of the tumbling of the Ferraris was also somewhat inevitable. Like Leclerc had achieved in qualifying, I think it was fair to say. But I was thinking of all the cars I would expect to see overtake them. The Mercedes was not necessarily the one I was expecting to make that easy and overtake that early.
It does feel like Mercedes has really improved its straight line performance, and now it does feel like Ferrari of the leading teams has the least oomph heading down the straight. Like when I think of recent races, like I never think of the Ferrari reeling anyone in. It always seems like they're kind of sitting ducks if someone can get a run on them, especially with DRS. Where there's some cars it just doesn't. If you get DRS, you won't be able to close on them. You just need DRS to hang on to them at all.
It's a very different team to what we saw in March, where they were probably number 2. And the other thing about Mercedes is they kind of had a bad. I think they brought in some new aero upgrade for the floor on Friday, which didn't seem to work very well. So they ended up pulling all that off. And then folks thought maybe that was responsible for some of their best pace. But then afterwards, Toto said that there was some type of mechanical issue that they'd finally figured out. So it was something that wasn't visible on the car, apparently, that was giving them a bit more extra pace.
This is such a weird, what? Like, they're still working on the cars this far into the season? I feel the last 2 years, the season would begin, and, by April or May, people were like, well, we've basically written off this season. We're now focusing all our efforts on next year's car. And so it is kind of odd to be in this place of now you kind of have the track upgrades, like so-and-so rollback upgrades. Other people would bring new stuff out. Is it also here early in the race that we hear Perez on the radio for the first time saying he's down on power?
Yes. Yeah, that started pretty early. And he and Verstappen are running different specs. I think Verstappen has the newer one. But that he complains a couple times during the race, but I don't know that we ever really get any conclusion about what was going on there. Lap 11 is when Verstappen and Russell pit from 8th and 5th place, respectively, both going from medium tires to hards. One lap later, Hamilton, Perez, and Piastri pit from 1st, 3rd, and 4th. Hamilton and Piastri going on to hards from their medium tires, but Red Bull opting to go medium for Perez, and it is initially a net loss for Piastri as he comes out of the pits in 10th behind Russell, but he sticks with him as they head up the Kemmel Straight and outdrags Russell, both with DRS, and Piastri does get the place on the inside. And is not done because he gets by Perez in the same place for 6th place, not 2 laps later. That McLaren looking fast.
Yeah, it is another solid week, it seems, for them, or weekend. But Norris is not having as enjoyable a pace here. He pits, I think it was a couple of laps after his teammate, and kind of comes out in a bit of no man's land.
Yes, it looks like lap 16. He comes out in 8th. Up at the front, Sainz is now in the lead on lap 17, having not pitted as a result of, again, starting on those hard tires. Zhou, by the way, retired early on in the race. It is not smooth sailing, however. He drifts off track at one point into the gravel, making the one-stop strategy less viable due to losing time there and shrinking the gap to the others behind.
Messing up his tires a little bit too. He really ate a lot of gravel. Norris's was a bit of a dip. He drifted.
I think the whole car went off.
Yeah.
Lap 21, Russell gets DRS on Perez along the Kemmel Straight. Perez defends to the inside, but Russell cruises by on the outside to take 4th place. And soon after, radios his team to consider the one stop. His tires apparently feeling pretty good. which is a big gamble because, as we learned after the race, Mercedes had not run the hard tire in practice.
Right. So they had no idea.
So they really had no idea. They were
rip
just going
or
off
wear.
of Russell's feel.
And his sort of YOLO swaggins situation.
That was my
here.
take on it. Was that I think Brundle made a similar comment that Russell takes big swings when he starts calling race strategy. He tends to favor like low percentage plays.
Yes.
And him being like, consider the one stop is like, yes, I'm always, when I'm playing like Motorsport Manager, I'm always considering the one stop. What if we simply didn't have to stop and then we would just like gain 20, 25 seconds on everyone? What a win. So that was my first take was like, here's Russell. He can taste, he's in first place. He can taste a win if everything breaks in his favor. So now he's like, let's just shit can the strategy everyone else is running and try to make this work. And I was kind of feeling like, man, George, it's going to happen again. Like, this is another, I think I can, but is this a smart play? Then, as the race goes on, you start to think, if they stumbled into a McLaren situation where accidentally they put the guy who was leading the race on the suboptimal strategy.
Right. The other situation, I guess, that could arise here is that Spa is a fairly high percentage safety car track. So there's a decent chance that they might get one here. But yeah, it's also not raining. So that
I wonder if you control for the rain.
Yeah.
Well, no, because
I bet that
here's the
percentage
thing,
drops a decent amount.
Also, if you rule out first lap incidents, because I feel like what brings up the safety car at Spa is the turn one crash in Les Ours.
He wasn't the only one, but yeah, you're right. The torpedo, as it were. Yeah, that's fair. I wonder if you do take if you take weather and I bet if you take weather and first lap incidents out of most, it obviously drops a decent amount. I bet it drops more at Spa.
Yeah,
I think it's probably fair to say.
Lap 21, Russell gets DRS on. Oh, I just read that. Did I? Yes.
On Perez?
On Perez.
You did.
Yeah,
Yes.
you mentioned that.
Yes. Okay, so meanwhile, Hamilton pits from first on lap 27, going on to another set of hard tires. He comes out in sixth in front of Leclerc, who had tried to undercut him to no avail. And now the only thing that can stop Hamilton is Russell eking out those hard tires that he put on lap 11 to the end of the race. So 3/4 of the race Russell has to do on those hard tires. Lap 31, Norris gets a fire under him finally and passes Perez on the Camel Straight for sixth place. And by lap 36, Leclerc has no answer for Hamilton and indeed falls into the clutches of one Oscar Piastri, who gets around him with a great move into turn 5 at the end of the straight there. And with 8 laps to go, the race continues to be interesting because if Piastri has the pace to chase down Hamilton, and it's looking like he might, what happens if Russell's tires fall off a cliff? Will Mercedes ask Russell to move over so Hamilton can pass so Piastri doesn't get them both? Coming to the end of the race, I really had no idea what was going to happen and made this really exciting.
Yeah, and we also don't know, like they've said, they'll let them race, but we don't know, maybe it'll be an incident. Maybe they'll take each other out. Maybe they'll battle each other so badly that it'll put them into the clutches of Oscar Piastri, who is up to this point having a really good race. He is an overtaking machine. He gets the job done. He's a great driver. I think the past
He'll do to you what he
races.
almost did to that Jackman.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah,
God.
Hey, man.
That Jackman should get a raise for he literally
Did you see when he realized he was coming in too hot and braced?
He braced.
And just absorbed that hit. I was just like,
amazing.
Holy shit. Like that guy...
he took one for the team.
A rugby star? I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, I think you could be making more doing something else.
You see, because I guess maybe because like we've all seen the Jack person who sort of gingerly goes and then just gets punted, like that one. So I can't tell if he's just doing it because he wants to be legend and it's just like, no, I'm going to stop this fucking car with my body, and he does, or and probably saves him a second and a half. Or if it's just like, no, the way to survive this is actually just to climb up and take the hit. I don't know.
Well, also, if you get knocked on your ass, like, that might attract the gaze of the stewards. Like, if you just absorb the hard hit, hey, good stop, whatever. But, like, you send the Jackman flying into the adjacent pit box. I don't know. Like, they tend not to like when pit crew are just sailing through the air. So that part was sort of a remarkable part. But yeah, the end of this race, Drew, was so, like, again, my instincts just wrong consistently. I was like, they need to swap him. Like, Russell is causing them to fall to Piastri. Piastri is, like, gobbling up time, but time at Spa is kind of weird. If you say, like, someone is losing a second and a half a lap at any other track, that means it's curtains. It is over. We need to, like, pull the handbrake on this. Spa, longest lap in F1 by time, like a second and a half out of 44 laps. It isn't quite the same thing, but, like, there was a point where Hamilton was gouging like 2 seconds a lap out of Russell, and then Piastri was, like, carving 3 out of them. And I was like, Russell's going to blow this thing. But the thing that surprised me as they started to draw close was I really thought with the tires that old, Russell would be more vulnerable exiting corners due to just lower grip and, like, the slip you get as you try to put power down coming out of a corner. But I guess with the new surface and the way the hards were working, that wasn't happening as much. And the thing that was lethal was as you get close, air comes off your front wing because of the dirty air, and now your cornering efficiency is just killed. So it kind of started to feel right when you start to expect, like, we're in endgame and all hell's going to break loose. It kind of felt like a bunch of boxers who couldn't lay a glove on each other.
Yeah. His traction out of the corners, you could literally see it. You could see it in, like, the almost like the second phase, like you said at the start of a race, like a couple of seconds in. Once they get off the corners, you could see him keep that gap. Now we'll talk about what happened after the race and whether or not that had anything to do with it. But it was impressive. You could by the penultimate lap, it was like, oh no, Hamilton's not going to get past him. Like, you could tell.
Yeah. Well, one non-Mercedes thing to go here. One lap 39, Sainz gets by Perez for 8th on the Camel Straight. But back at the front with 2 laps, albeit long ones, to go, Hamilton does get within DRS range to Russell. Like you said, Danny, no team orders from Mercedes. Meanwhile, Piastri is about a second and a half behind Hamilton. Final lap, Hamilton locks up into turn 1, which doesn't help him. And meanwhile, Piastri gets DRS as they all head down to the Camel Straight. But nobody is close enough to pass. And in the end, Russell somehow keeps the speed up and keeps Hamilton behind. Piastri does not have the juice to get Hamilton, and that is the way they crossed the line. However, about 2.5 hours later, George Russell disqualified. How did you guys find out about this?
I was at the Arsenal Man United game in SoFi Stadium in LA.
Oh, wow.
On Saturday. So I woke up Sunday morning and went to the airport, and I sat down, went to the airport early, and I sat down, connected to LAX Wi-Fi, and put the race on and just watched it at my gate. And when I got to the end, I was like, oh wow, Russell won. And then I remember I'd seen a tweet earlier in the morning saying, here's a picture of Russell outside the press conference with his hand in his... And I kind of looked away because I was like, oh, I don't want spoilers. And I was like, did Russell win or did Russell lose? You know what? I'm just going to not think about it. Yeah. I'm going to watch the race. So then I went looking for that tweet to be like, oh, what was the context of that? And I typed like George Russell press conference image or something into Google, and it popped up and went, oh no. Oh no. I feel like between this and the LaSalle one, and I'm trying to think, is there any other ones? I feel like there's another one. Russell has this like cursed streak. There's been a couple of times he's had this happen. Was it Singapore as well?
Well, so wait, hang on.
So his first ride for Mercedes.
So Bahrain. Which
You
is the
remember
one he lost?
he-
He was in Hamilton's seat.
Yes, that was Losail, wasn't it?
Okay.
Oh no, it wasn't Losail. It was the second name they give Bahrain.
Secure, but they only
Secure,
ran it that
yeah.
1 year. Was
Yeah.
that the COVID year? It was the COVID year. It was the COVID year. They were there that I think it was one of those races.
Yes, no, it was. Yeah, they raced it twice.
He's not
On
a
the
lucky
second-
driver.
Yeah.
No.
I
And,
found out. So MK had we watched the race. MK was leaving on a business trip, and whenever MK leaves, all hell breaks loose with the dogs for a little while, and there's like a lot of period where I'm like just kind of absorbed, trying to get them all settled down and everything, and finally she's landed. We're starting to text, and so I'm on my phone. And we're literally talking about like how good the race was. It was fun to watch it before she left. And then I open up Autosport real quick, and I'm like, "Oh, what's this?" And I think it was actually right before the disqualification was like set in stone. It was right in that like the tail end, the last minutes of like, hold the fucking phone, people. Like the stewards are investigating, but everyone who knows like that particular infraction, if they're investigating it, it's over. Like there's no like barring a miracle. This is one of those black and white penalties that there's just not. If they're investigating it, it means they've got you.
Yeah, it's like pit lane entry. There's a couple of them. False start's another one. If you ever see these stewards are investigating it, the guillotine is already on the way down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we need to take a quick break, but we'll be back with why right after this. Okay, so at least in this article from Race Fans, Mercedes isn't totally sure why, but the car was weighed after the race and was found to be 1.5 kilograms under the minimum weight limit. And just to put a bow on this,
It was weighed once with gas in it, and they reckoned that it was going to be under, because of the. So they drained all the gas out, and then they did the last one. It was within
right.
Yeah.
Right, which is apparently that it's the one without gas that counts, because you do need to have some gas left over for a fuel sample at the end, also to be tested.
That
As we
I
remember.
believe, plus the driver's weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Because my initial thing was like maybe it was a fuel sample thing, like that year that.
Bottas.
Was it Racing Point where they were trying to like swish the car around and try to shake enough for the fuel sample out, and eventually like submitted the whole car to the FIA, and we're like, it's in there somewhere. We swear to God, and it's like, guys, we can't draw it out. Like that's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thinking is that because Russell did a one stop, he may have worn down more rubber from his tires than the team was expecting. As we mentioned, Mercedes did not run the hard tires during practice. According to this article, only of the front-running teams, Red Bull ran them, and Christian Horner had just read this in Christian Horner's voice.
Great.
Absolutely, I'm sure you would have lost well over a kilo of rubber. We saw that on Friday.
Oh my God.
The
I'm
other
surprised.
thing
Is that-
about this
Yeah, go on.
is that in normal or in other tracks, you have a full victory lap where you can pick up marbles offline, and these stick to your tires, and then when you come in to get weighed, they count for the weight. Spa is weird because it's so huge, you pit before you do that. And so that was an additional opportunity for Russell to pick up.
You usually, how would you go around a second time on a normal track?
When you do your victory lap, you do the full lap, and you just hoover up all the rubber.
But you cross the line, and then after that you go around again.
Yeah.
So you go around twice, but they obviously don't. It's bad because what? Because the lap is like a minute.
It's too long.
48 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
Did they go in a second time? Really?
That's what I'm taking from this article. Yes.
I guess maybe because everyone else has to finish the race. Yeah, it makes sense. Maybe you can't have people come into the pits. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'm just. Yeah, maybe it's less of a thing. I don't notice it on smaller tracks.
No, wait. So no. The winner crosses the line. They go around and they enter the pits after that. They do not go around a second time.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So I don't know how.
So
maybe they're not allowed to collect the rubber because everyone's still racing at that stage.
They are.
Mercedes were arguably unlucky to find themselves in this situation at Spa, the only track on the calendar where drivers do not perform a victory lap after taking the checkered flag. They are directed into the pit. They are directed into the pit lane exit instead.
Yes.
Yeah, they cut it.
Okay.
They go around the source. They cut it and they loop in. The thing is,
oh, you're right. They did. I saw the footage of him driving in the pit lane the wrong way, and never wondered why. I watched that. It was never considered. Why is he driving down the pit lane in the wrong direction? I guess that makes sense.
But to me, if that is the reason, that still feels like it points back to Mercedes in kind of an incriminating way, because it's that's just too tight a margin. Basically, you know that you're not going to be able to pick up rubber. The wheels didn't look particularly badly worn. He'd run them hard, he'd run them long, but it doesn't seem like it was an extraordinary, he did this last time. Tires,
right? Russell did a one-stop, I think the last time Mercedes was here doing a full race. And so theoretically, Mercedes would have known that was a possibility. But, I mean, Andrew Shevlin from Mercedes says, we won't be making any excuses. It is clearly not good enough, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. So they're just taking it on the chin. They're not appealing or anything. It's just, it's one of those things. We just see it sometimes where, it comes to mind Ricciardo's pit stop at Monaco.
Well, hang on, but somebody pointed out a lot of these. They had a car DQ'd last year. Hamilton's skid block, disqualification at Coda. Once his misfortune begins to look like carelessness. It is. Shit happens. They had imperfect information. Everyone does. But this is one of those things where other teams didn't get disqualified this way. This is you blew a race win because of this. And this is one of those things where I think it's sometimes easy to overestimate Mercedes because they give off such an air of corporate imperturbability and competence. They, it's all everything about them is very sleek, very polished, very cool, calm, and collected. And then you have kind of egregious lapses like this that, they say we'll go back, we'll review, we'll figure this out. But it's these margins are being cut awfully fine. Yeah. And maybe that is just them desperately trying to get back into some kind of contention.
Or it's because of this thing we keep hearing that they're losing personnel behind the scenes quite a lot. And maybe the quality of the replacements or the quality of the organization has just had a bit of a brain drain. I don't know.
I still kind of wonder some of the part swaps they've executed lately made them I wonder if a different part was not calculated correctly, that they had not accounted for.
They did remove all that stuff on Saturday, all the
and so maybe they just didn't correctly note the shift in weight, but
check that spreadsheet, man.
We don't like it when drivers just lose their shit on a team, but there are times where, I don't know, maybe stuff like this would happen less if you lost your shit on the team more. There are times where everyone's being, I'm sure you feel bad, we're going to move on from this as a team. But, if I'm Russell, I would be incandescent if this happened.
Race Fans points out that Fernando Alonso also did a one-stop.
Yeah.
Although he switched to hard tires 3 laps later than Russell and had run the hard tires in practice, so Aston Martin would therefore have known more about that tire's wear rate. But in the end, Russell disqualified from what would have been his 3rd career win. Hamilton inherits first place, followed by Piastri, and then rounding out the new podium, Charles Leclerc in third. Then we've got Verstappen, who made it all the way up to a net fourth, ahead of Norris in fifth, Sainz in sixth, Perez seventh, Alonso eighth, Ocon ninth, and Ricciardo getting that lucky last point in effectively 10th place.
Perez seventh, who started in second and who needed a good race this weekend to justify his seat in Red Bull.
Or apparently not.
Or apparently not. We'll talk about that in the news. Yeah, exactly.
In 11th, Stroll, and then we've got Albon, Gasly, Magnussen, Bottas, Tsunoda, Sargent, and Hulkenberg, then the DNF of Zhou. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the final race for a while. So
for a little bit.
Hope you liked it. I was surprised at this, how much I enjoyed this Spa race. I was not expecting a lot from Spa. I think over the most recent years, it's been a little boring, but this was, for a race that didn't have virtually any incidents.
Yes, it didn't.
I think this is of some of the most entertaining that Formula One can be.
You cannot underestimate it's like the whole, if you end a movie well, have people walking out of the cinema smiling and chatting to each other and doing. If a race has an interest, even if in this case it actually didn't end up having a very tight ending, like the reality of it didn't. But if you're getting to the end of a race and you're like, oh, the last few laps of this are getting real tight, and you're in it, and you're like, it definitely adds a massive like sort of extra. It gives it an extra star almost, regardless of what happened earlier.
And also, I also thought it was a really enjoyable race. Didn't have a ton of overtaking passes, like memorable duels. It's just that there's a type of F1 race that the strategy is so engaging, and then it is just a pleasure to watch these cars run on a track like Spa, especially on a clear day where you can they really pop, they look gorgeous. They had an absolute poet up in the helicopter this week. The sheer number of shots that I was like, holy shit! There was a shot it was the most the producer flexing. I think it was before qualifying, where they opened on just dipping through the cloud layer and then back out of it to bring out the sense of the way fog hangs over the valley and the racetrack. And I was like, this is incredible. This is cinematic. The way they are shooting Spa this weekend.
Even the pit lane cameraman did the flip. I haven't seen that in a while.
Oh my God. Hang on, do we know how they do the flip?
I forget. Is it on a little gyro or something?
No,
it must be.
It is just the guy literally rolling the camera and catching it.
Wow, that's wild. It's got that.
What if you
rolling shutter?
You just get fired if you're I really wanted to do the tire spin move. Sorry about that camera.
Yeah. Yes. Should we take it to the news? Speaking of.
Let's do it.
Drivers. Danny, Carlos Sainz has finally landed.
He's done it. White smoke has come out of the top of Ferrari's garage. Carlos Sainz has chosen a husband. So the sort of, I don't even know if it's much of a cork in the bottle at this stage, but the decision, I think Perez actually is probably more of a cork in the bottle, but we'll talk about that in a second. The decision that Carlos Sainz had to make has been sort of sitting over F1 like a bit of a cloud for the past couple of months. Which team he was going to go to. He's obviously a driver in demand. He's leaving a great team. It's a tricky situation for him because a lot of the seats that perhaps a driver of his quality might want to be moving to are not available. The ones that were available to him were sort of eventually came down to three. There was obviously more suitors. He didn't really have much interest in going to a place like Kick Sauber or Haas. The ones that were left were Sauber, soon to be Audi, Williams, and Alpine. All three of these teams at the start of the season, and certainly last year, were one question. And where they are now is a very different reality. Williams are having a sort of a very transparent sort of James Vow's fueled attempt to right some pretty deep wrongs within that organization. They are doing so, it seems, like I said, both transparently and honestly. And they're sort of like, in a way, they have nothing left to lose. They can't get much worse. I guess you can always get a bit worse than everyone, but they're having some forward momentum.
Well, Sauber's there to backstop you. A long enough timeline, Sauber will sink back below you. It worked out for Haas even.
Yeah, the Sauber situation is weird because obviously we think that like, okay, like Audi's coming in, they're going to be this like company, this big, a lot of money coming into it. But it seems the more closer we get to it, the sort of the more tentative the whole thing kind of feels. Like maybe they're not really putting their best foot forward on this one, Audi. Personnel issues as well. We're not. It's less of a confident thing, and I think that was the one that was probably holding up Sainz the most. The other one is the absolute dumpster fire that's going on over at Alpine, which is just like there is a Gary Larson cartoon I love that is like nature's way of saying stay away, and it's like a picture of like a rattlesnake doing its thing and like a bull charging, and then some dude who's in like a who's wearing like a swimming fucking attire and with a top hat, and he just looks like you could just put like Flavio Briatore there, I think, and it would do the exact same thing. They're obviously just organizationally have been just a complete mess for the past 4 or 5 years, picking of their drivers, the team principals, everything. There's
Again,
more news editor.
They
this
lost
week.
out on Oscar Piastri, a thing that looks increasingly momentous, like a fork in the road moment, bigger than Alonso leaving, was the fact their legal department couldn't get a proper term sheet together for Oscar Piastri, and
Quick, tweet that we signed him.
It is, good. and then you sent poor Amar Safnauer out there to be like, we expect this young man to be honorable, much the same way he expected to get his 100 races. I don't know.
And then Safnauer obviously got ousted last year. Bruno Fami and Rob will talk about in a second is now stepping down from Alpine as well. There's just it's got no written all over it. So in a way, I feel like Sainz had to choose Williams. Out of the three of these, it's the one. Well, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, if Mercedes isn't going to come off the Antonelli thing, which I think that's the other thing that happened in the last couple of weeks is. So here's the other alarming thing. Antonelli apparently has said he's not sure he's ready for F1.
Oh wow! Okay.
Which on the one hand you can like the humility, but like also he is saying he just got to Formula 2. Like there is an element of he has not gotten a ton of seasoning. He is a little out of sorts. He struggled a bit the opening of this year. He started winning races and like performing much better lately. So like Mercedes now feels like they're much more ready to pull that trigger. So that's why they're just not going to pursue Sainz, or why they couldn't, like, because he would know that any sort of deal with them is sort of a placeholder deal. I still feel like it's kind of. I feel like Sainz probably should have gotten a better seat than this, and like it's cool that he goes to Williams, but it does feel like a couple organizations have dropped the ball here, and maybe it'll all work out well for them, and they'll look like geniuses for passing on him. But that seems like a big if.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Mercedes thing. I don't think like Antonelli is 6th or 7th in F2 at the moment. He's having a good season, but it's not like he's like a runaway leader, in this. And we'll talk about like other people who've done really well in F2 who still don't have seats. When we talk about what's going on with Perez and Liam Lawson, but I'm with you. I think the other thing at Williams as well is that maybe the deal allows him a return to a different team in a couple of years is the other thing. Like this isn't like a super long-term thing. Got a little bit of multi-year, exactly, the classic multi-year, more than 1 year. Sainz says, it is no secret that this year's driver market has been exceptionally complex for the various reasons that it has taken me some time to announce my decision. However, I'm fully confident that Williams is the right place for me to continue my F1 journey, and I'm extremely proud of joining such an historic and successful team where many of my childhood heroes drove in the past and made their mark on the sport. Also have a quote here Is this actually from Minnesota? Sorry, I thought it was a Vows one. The ultimate goal of bringing Williams back to where it belongs at the front of the grid is a challenge that I embrace with excitement and positivity. I'm convinced that this team has all the right ingredients to make history again. And starting on January 1st, I will be given my absolute best to drive for Williams forward alongside every single member of the team. So, yeah, it's
So that's a statement PR put in his mouth.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Continue my journey.
here's my question also. If you're Alex Albon, how are you feeling?
Well, finally, you've got somebody who also had their kidney removed. Is that what was it again?
Oh, that's
Gallbladder.
right. The first no
Sorry.
Both of
appendix
them.
team in F1.
Yeah, I should be one of their engineers as well. How did I forget it was
Oh,
gallbladder?
was
when
that? No, I think your gallbladder. I think it's
I was
appendix or both of them.
Appendix. It was appendix. Yeah, it's the first no appendix F1 team. So there you go.
I love this choice. I think this is great.
That's for a pub quiz in a couple of years, I think.
Now all they need is Adrian Newey, and the circle will be complete. I think going forward here, the funniest thing that could happen is Sauer picks up Magnussen so that it's Hulkenberg and Magnussen again.
That would be funny.
And Bottas goes to Mercedes.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Wow, that is cursed.
That would be funny as hell.
Yeah.
George, you're going to love him. He was the best teammate I'd ever had. I'm sure he's gotten over the slapping his helmet after you ran him off the road at Imola thing.
Destroyed him at Imola, feet from the Tamburello corner.
I do think there's an element of... It's a long way, I think, before you would start seeing... Albon and Sainz both seem like really good vibes guys. Like, just in terms of...
Yeah.
In recent years, they're well-liked on the grid. Their teammates appear to have almost universally gotten on with them pretty well. And I think that where Williams is at, I think you're in for probably 2 more years, really, of we're not racing for any meaningful championship stakes. It is 2 years of program building. And those would be 2 good drivers, I think, for program building.
Yeah.
At
That's
that
true.
juncture, I think Williams is going to make a choice about a number 1 driver and start looking at move or won't have a choice because both of them will have proven themselves and be poached in the classic Williams fashion. But I do think
or
it
2026
makes sense.
Williams just like something happens and suddenly Williams are in there. And then, that's always the flirt with the new regulations. You're always like anything could happen. Like usually like you don't get a Jensen Button championship. It doesn't usually happen. But
It's like New
it
Year's
might.
resolutions, right? Where like new technical regs
Yeah.
come out and it's like this year getting back to my playing weight from college.
yeah.
Yeah. I think I guess we'll talk about it in a second, but I know I'll save my other driver machinations for later. Let's talk about Alpine, Rob.
Yeah. So as you alluded to, one of the things that probably turns Sainz off is that Alpine is one of the biggest dumpster fires on the grid, and what emerged in the last week. Kind of surprising, I guess, only insofar as you really didn't think it would be a total party kill over at Alpine. You figured somebody who wasn't Flavio would end up sort of like climbing the chaos ladder to the top. But Bruno Fama also out, effective immediately. He is not going back with the team after the summer break.
The team principal.
And yes, the team principal. The guy who sort of stepped in to replace Safnauer and took over the team. Sort of memorably in the last season of Drive to Survive. But yeah, he is leaving the team. And high-tech Formula 2, Formula 3 team principal Oliver Oakes will be stepping in. Fama is an engine development guy.
Why is he going there? Aren't they getting rid of their engine?
Well, that's where he's from, So I think you could say, just
I guess so. Yeah, that's why he's
strength to strength.
Yeah, well, get out of here. Your job's about to be made redundant.
So there were some couple interesting things happened around Alpine this last week. One, Esteban Ocon, like basically as soon as the Haas deal was done, just decided to open up about his views on Alpine, which is that it sucks. He just lit into it, and he said that they never listen to the drivers. There's things that like me and Pierre are dealing with that we know that Daniel brought up with them, that we know that, like, just going back, like basically the team doesn't listen to its drivers, that people have brought up again and again issues with the car, and the team just doesn't respond to it. According to him, basically his whole marriage with Alpine was over even before the Monaco dust up, which I don't know. Certainly Autosport's gloss on that appeared to indicate that they'd also heard that basically they were headed for divorce. But again, the Monaco thing didn't look good. Now it all increasingly looks like just a tailspin from a team. And it's possible that, like, Gasly suddenly looks like the guy who couldn't get a lifeboat.
Yeah, right.
The other interesting thing, so Autosport, in its analysis of Sainz joining Williams, made a comment offhand in its analysis of, like, apparently Sainz was basically ready to go to Williams, which is when we heard all those rumors suddenly. And then Flavio showed up and made a final, like, last-minute pitch. And the centerpiece of that pitch was, we're getting out of the engine business. We're going to sort out this. We're going to sort out this team. There's a plan to turn this organization around, and you do well at it. But the other thing that the Autosport, this is not attributed. It's just an Autosport. The Autosport. I forget who wrote this one. Let me go up again. Jake Boxall, Leg, which is just one of their major reporters there, major F1 reporters, made a comment that basically Alpine is just marking time until Renault sells the outfit.
Whoa.
The assumption is just long term, this team is probably cooked as part of Renault, and this entire enterprise is eventually just going to be acquired by somebody. Once Renault finally loses patience, which it rapidly is, which has been part of what's driving the turnover at the top of the team. So this is like this. I feel like every couple months we read a story about wild disarray at Alpine and heads rolling, and that is never the end of it. And this appears to not be the end of it, right? Like there's no new regime, and I think part of it is Flavio's in there operating as a fixer in a real old school politics kind of way, where like he can't be a team principal. Like he's not actually allowed to like be that close to a team. So the team is increasingly being run behind the scenes by like an operative who's trying to restore its fortunes, but can't actually take over day-to-day operations. It's a very weird situation.
Well, the situation is looking better for Esteban Ocon because he has found a team, as you alluded, Rob. It is Haas. They now have 2 drivers for next year. Oliver Behrman, the rookie, who has raced 1 or 2.
I think he just got
F1
one race.
Just the one?
The one appendix race from Sainz.
Okay.
His name is, I don't think we get enough mileage out of the fact that his name is Bearman.
Half bear, half man.
Yeah. All driver.
Ollie Behrman, very cute name.
Team principal Ayo Komatsu, according to this racefans.net article, has a long history with Ocon, having been his race engineer when he had his first run in a Formula One test with Lotus, now Alpine, in Valencia 10 years ago.
I feel old as hell.
Yeah. Komatsu says he displayed his talents back then, coming off of the back of a strong performance in the junior categories. He just won the 2014 European Formula 3 Championship and has gone on to become an established talent in F1 and, of course, a Grand Prix winner. So they're looking for someone with experience to pair with the rookie of Behrman. Sure.
If there's one person I'd want a rookie exposed to, it's Esteban Ocon. That is, boy, I want to give someone a good on ramp to F1. Here's the guy across the garage from you, Esteban Ocon. He bites.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for him to be joining the Chaos team. Yeah.
Hey, this is just another place where Io Komatsu could prove himself to be like the greatest turnaround architect in F1 history.
I could also see Magnussen going to Alpine as like the listen.
He crackles with Alpine energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. You're right.
Yeah. He currently does not have a seat, nor does Sargent, although I don't see him being picked up by anybody.
I do not see that either.
Danny, what about Sergio Perez?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, sorry. The odyssey that is, will Perez remain in Formula One? It feels like it's been about 5 years of this now. The latest chapter, I am firmly in the get rid of him stage of and I like Sergio Perez, but I don't know. He's had an absolute torrid time for the past, even like the weeks prior to him signing his new contract at Red Bull. And there was all these reports over whether or not they would dump him or not. There was apparently a provision within his contract that said if he was, 100 points behind Verstappen by the time they hit the mid-season break, that there was an option they could release him, all of this sort of stuff. Then waiting in the rings, predominantly you have Daniel Ricciardo, who's at RB, but he's not been doing amazing at RB. Yuki Tsunoda doesn't even seem to have doesn't seem to be getting a look in on this, even though he has proven himself to be a great driver and is outscoring Ricciardo pretty handily. Liam Lawson is there as well. He's only got 1 year left on his Red Bull contract. He seemed to do quite well when he was popped into the team for a little while. But then, he's sort of waiting. And then you also have the current F2 leader who basically has it sewn up at this stage, Isaac Hadjar, who's also a Red Bull driver, who's sort of waiting in the wings, probably not for that seat, but waiting for somebody to go into that seat so that he can get in another seat in F1 maybe next year. So there's a lot of reasons to get rid of Checo, but the dealer came around and they decided to check, I guess, on Checo and go for another round at least. It's being reported that he has it for the year, but I think you have to listen to what Horner said. Christian Horner quote here says, Checo remains a Red Bull racing driver despite recent speculation, and we look forward to seeing him perform at tracks he has previously excelled at after the summer break. So some folks are reading this as, and let me just have a quick little look at what the schedule is, so maybe we can figure out what these are. So I don't know about Monza. Azerbaijan, he's done well in the past. Singapore is another one because he's good at street circuits. And I don't know about USA, but then I guess Mexico. Actually, I'm not quite sure how he's done well at Mexico. I think that they're probably keeping him in the car for the time being. I don't think they're keeping him for the rest of the year. I think we are delaying the decision.
Oh, wait, hang on. If they're keeping him now, they're keeping him for the rest of the year.
I don't know. Red Bull's past, they would have axed him ages ago, right? They're cutthroat. No one has been given this much leeway as he has this year. But this year's Red Bull, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if in politics, I think they don't think Daniel has it, and I agree. I think Daniel does not deserve the Red Bull seat based on how he's performed at RB. I think they won't go for Yuki, probably because, I don't know, I think because he's Japanese. Honestly, I look at that organization, I look at Yuki's performances. I think the only reason why they don't put him in that seat, maybe it's his attitude, but to me, I just roll that up with probably.
I think that's a combination of the second language issue and then temperament is just not. That is going to be oil and water with sort of the posh Brit. No, everyone calm down and just do the right. I do think they would look very dimly on how Yuki has comported himself, but I do think that's a lot of bias from just how culturally Red Bull operates.
Exactly. We'll call it a culture clash, and it feels a little bit more acceptable. But I think he's be given a bit of a short straw on this.
So Dre Harrison over at Motorsport 101 did write a good piece analyzing where Red Bull's thinking was at, and actually he called them staying on Checo as probably the most likely option.
Right.
Because, like, if you actually step back and look at Yuki, you're kind of left with, well, how good is he? Because he beat the brakes off, Dutch driver. De Vries. But De Vries kind of sucked in that car.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of those situations where it's like, it's just probably maybe not a good yardstick. And then there's the question of, well, how good a yardstick is Daniel at this point, post that unlucky accident at Zandvoort especially? Like, something is not right. So there's just a real they have a really low confidence interval on any of the current options to hand. Liam Lawson, it was a charming story, but again, really small sample size. Like, they've got all these, like, their entire team is made up of, like, in case of emergency, break glass backup plans. But none of them, what they don't have is a working pipeline that has somebody that you're like, this is the time for this person to step up. If it's anyone, it's probably Yuki, but the aforementioned...
So do you think this is an emergency? They are 42 points ahead of McLaren in the constructors.
My feeling is that I completely agree. I don't know if Yuki I think Yuki's probably a more useful driver to have in the RB team in a way. I think he fits that team really well and probably is a good median driver to have in there. I think the problem that you have here is that somebody needs to move up so that they can get these other drivers space. I think Liam Lawson is basically going to be a free agent. Maybe they don't think he has it either. I know they did the test at Silverstone and apparently he didn't light them on fire. Same thing with Hadjar. Does Hadjar do a second season in F2 or does he come over to RB? He won't be able to unless they release Daniel next year or unless they release Yuki next year and then they don't take on Liam. So it just seems like they have a pipeline problem that, like, Sergio Perez is probably not like the long-term future of this team. So in my head, I'm like, just cut and run. Like, at this pace, McLaren's going to catch them on the Constructors' Championship.
This is the thing. Like, I think just in terms of car development, I think they're probably going to lose Constructors just because Max is great in that Red Bull. Generally, nobody else has been nearly as good as him in the Red Bull. Like Drew pointed out ages ago that Max has a reputation for, like, having a preference for very high oversteer setups, right? Like last week, car has a slightly unusual amount of understeer for him.
Yeah,
he loses his shit over the setup. Doesn't seem to mesh well with other drivers. So I do think there's a little bit of, have they kind of just concluded that we've put all our points basically in getting Max a bunch of drivers' championships, which from a marketing standpoint, which is Red Bull's DNA, is the championship that matters, right? Like, Constructors brings in the direct revenue from the sport, but if it's more of a marketing play and a lifestyle play, you don't give a shit. You want the drivers' championship. But I do kind of look at it as, like, if this is your state of play, Checo asked and answered. He's not the guy. So you do need to start seeing which of these options is viable. Maybe Danny going back to Red Bull fixes Danny. I don't know. Maybe it is time to just see, like, what do you have in Yuki? That could be the play, but it's standing pat seems nuts.
And it's like if you fair. If you think that it's not Daniel and it's not Yuki, and that it's not Liam or Hadjar, they're a bit too young, then why are you passing on Sainz? Like, what's the choice here? Like, why are you not, like, if you have the person in your hand and you're just not willing to play them, then, like, get another card. Like I just don't know what they're doing. It seems like a weirdly, like, I think in the past Red Bull has been, like, overly reactive and it's been to the detriment of their number two drivers and probably, I don't know if it's been a detriment to the racing program. I don't know. Maybe that's actually a really good way to be. But this inaction right now seems to be at the detriment of their racing program. And I don't know. Like, that Red Bull's not going to get any faster. The problem doesn't seem to be that Perez is making mistakes. The problem in this, I mean, he's making some mistakes in quali, but like his car is in a position where he can do overtakes. His teammate started in, 11th and managed to get up to 4th. And Perez started in 2nd after Verstappen got slipped back and ended up 5 places behind him in the same car. Granted, they had different specs, but like that's not Checo crashing. That's his race pace, and that's the problem.
You got to see what some of these backup options are actually capable of doing, and at least you get more info for making decisions next year. There's a weird rudderlessness to this, which does feel like it's of a piece with the chaos we saw at the start of the year.
Yeah.
This organization is in disarray since Mateschitz died. The guys at the top can't stand each other. Franz Tost disappearing, leaving in the middle of all this. There is, if you were looking at this from the standpoint of like a traditional sports team, your farm system is a mess. Your front office is a mess. You know what I mean? It is just, this is not good. Maybe this is just a vote of like, yeah, it's actually not Checo's fault. There's just issues with like the way the car's been developed. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, it is time to start answering some of these other options. And you're losing time to evaluate choices.
Yeah.
In all this.
Well, speaking of disarray, Rob,
so
take it away.
Time for another little IndyCar minute, just because it is so funny.
I love these.
So Zach Brown,
IndyCars.
I just read this headline and I lost my mind. It is over on Autosport. Brown blames Palou for Aaron McLaren's unfair reputation of IndyCar driver turmoil.
Why is he dragging this back up again? Stop it.
Well, because it just keeps that he can't shake it, and he's just trying to figure out like why does McLaren have a reputation for having a circular firing squad when it comes to its IndyCar driver lineup. So here his argument is this really stems from when Alex Palou backed out of his deal with McLaren to go back to Chip Ganassi. He, quote, "We brought Pato into the sport. I've stuck with him. Alex Palou, we had a contract. We did our part. That created this domino effect. Alex Rossi saw through his contract. We're giving Nolan Siegel a chance, a young American. We brought back Theo Pourchaire for Toronto to, in brackets here. He was replacing Rossi, who'd broken his thumb in practice. And so, unfortunately, this Palou situation has kind of unfairly branded us as being difficult and we're tough on drivers, when actually, I think our relationship with our drivers is one of our greatest strengths. Couple things Zach fails to mention here. Early in the season, this isn't really their fault, but Dave Malukas, preseason, out cycling, breaks his wrist, can't drive for a while. And then they just canceled his contract because he was going to miss so much of the season.
Wow.
No point in keeping him on. They needed to replace him.
If you break your hand cycling, you got to make sure your dad owns the team.
Yeah. There is drivers need to stop cycling. Like, hey, you know what? Peloton. I've heard it's fun. Get on that. So they signed Theo Pourchaire, very good Formula 2 driver, didn't quite make the leap into F1. I don't know if he's still considered. It doesn't seem like he's considered for any of the seats to advance. So he audibled into an IndyCar track. So they signed Theo, and he didn't set the world on fire, but he was, it's a new car. He was coming up to speed. He seemed doing okay. They signed him, and then right after Le Mans, they cut him and replaced him with Nolan Siegel, who was the star driver in IndyCar Next. This season also won Le Mans with I think it was a LMP2 team. Also backed with a lot of family money and has had a lot of momentum, behind him. But none of that changes the fact that they had literally just signed Pourchaire. They had just signed him.
Who had
And as
just
far
won
as
the
he
F2
knew-
championship the year before as well.
Yeah, as far as he knew, that was a gig for the rest of the year. And he found out apparently on social media. Like, he gave a statement where he thought at first people were just messing with him because he was like, I literally just, the ink wasn't even dry on the contract. And suddenly Nolan Siegel, who is in IndyCar NXT, so maybe everyone thought he was going to move into IndyCar next year. No, they bumped him up. So McLaren's IndyCar effort has this reputation for being kind of untrustworthy and unable to keep its driver lineup together. I think in part because like some of the stuff isn't their fault, but I think when you look at the Malukas situation, did they have to move on from him? Probably. But they kind of they voided the contract because of an injury. Never a great look. And then the Pourchaire thing just looks shitty, right? I don't even put any spin on that. You signed a guy, and then a minute later, you're like, we'll take the Rich Wunderkind. It all makes sense, but it does kind of suggest that your team has no consistency or trustworthiness if you're a driver considering doing business with them. It makes Alex Palou look like a genius. Like, it is one of those things, like a bit like Oscar Piastri. Alex Palou was like, my stock is so high, I can do whatever I want. And he was correct, too.
Well, thank you, Rob, for the IndyCar Minute. We're running a little long here. What do you guys think?
No, tell the story.
Tell us.
Okay,
You said you
so
had a story.
I do, yeah. And I guess if you're looking at this time off and you're wondering what to do, I have a suggestion. For my birthday this year, my wife signed me up for a day-long karting class at Sonoma Raceway.
Oh my God!
So I did this a couple weekends ago.
Excellent.
There are apparently multiple types of karts. There are like entertainment karts, which are like, at Dave and Buster's or whatever.
Bumper cards.
Yeah. The karts I drove were called, I think, Type 1 cars.
Okay.
They will do 55 miles an hour. They're speed governed for that.
Okay.
And then you've got Type 2 karts, which is the step up, and those will do 75.
Fucking hell. 55 when you're like that low. That's
Yeah,
pretty fast.
It's crazy. So the way that this worked was, it was a 6-hour thing. You get like 15 minutes in the car, and then you jump out, and you have there are two groups of like, 5 or 6 racers going out each time, and you all have like an instructor assigned to that group, and so he's taking notes as you're driving on each driver. And so when you hop out, he goes, okay, you can get on the throttle sooner, and you can keep it pegged through the S's, like those sorts of things. And then on the next round, you get to try that.
Wow. Are they looking at telemetry then to do that?
No,
Or
he's just using
eyeballing
his
it?
eyeballs. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
They are 4-stroke, 10 horsepower engines. 55 miles an hour does feel very fast. There was only one part of the track where I got up to full speed.
What was the circuit like? What it looked like? Pretty flat?
Yeah, pretty flat. There was a few like off-camber turns, which even though, even over a few feet of camber change, you can definitely feel.
Oh, of course, right.
The craziest thing was learning that, so the karts are 175 pounds. So,
Okay.
like, you are a big effect, make a big effect on them.
Right.
And your natural tendency around a turn is to lean into the turn to compensate,
Yeah.
like toward the apex. They want you to do the opposite because
What?
you want to put weight on the outside tires because that gives them grip.
Grip. Oh my god.
And so you are like, I had to like think about it to counter that, to lean into the turn.
Wow.
So that I had more grip on the outside and could thus
Well, wait.
turn.
Lean away from the turn into the slip, basically. So if I'm
Into the
turning right,
outside
you're
tires.
throwing yourself to the left.
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh no! I couldn't do that. Oh no!
Yeah,
no.
I think-
That-
I
I
think
would
I'd-
feel super unbalanced and
Yes.
unsafe.
Oh man. I'd be worried about flipping if I leaned
That's
too hard
the
the other
dude.
way.
Like, no, I no.
They're
sir.
apparently really, really hard to flip.
Okay.
Yeah, they're so wide. I know their base is so wide, but like,
I got
Yeah.
a big head though, man.
I'm real tall.
really low to the
I'm
ground.
real tall. That center of gravity's gonna
Yeah.
be high.
What was really cool is that I felt myself getting noticeably better
Oh wow.
with
Cool.
each session. And I think so I am terrible at understanding track layouts, Danny. You're great at it, which is why I'm content to have you do the track walks forever, because I just don't have that that sense of turns. Like, I'm bad at them in video games. Like, I
Right.
forget. But there's something about, I think, being in a physical space
Right.
and having like G-forces also as a part of your memory, where you can remember it so much better, or I can. The one thing that video games did help with was left foot braking. You're braking with your left foot and accelerating with your right, and they definitely don't want you to have both on at the same time, because you'll burn out the clutch. And one guy almost caught a fine for doing that.
Wow.
They are automatic. At least these were no gear changes. Yeah. The other thing was, because you are half the weight of this vehicle, and they're very low to the ground, and so they flex. And if you can do something to bend the chassis to counter that flex that your weight does, that helps. So they tell you to push away from the wheel, and so you're like shoving the wheel away from you as you head into the turns to keep it more
Right.
rigid. And I thought that, like, okay, this is gonna make up 100th on a lap time or whatever. But actually, what happens is that you can really, really feel it, because it presses you further into the seat and gives you so much more
grip
information about what's happening to your car. You can feel the grip so much better. I am not an expert driver or anything. Like, I have very little time driving cars at speed or around tracks or anything. But I felt, I can sense so much more in this.
You're like, if you were 5 years old doing this, you might have been Lewis Hamilton if you could like have that sort of second. But that's the foundation of how these.
Yeah.
We talk about, like, George Russell felt the car. He was like, oh no, I think I can keep these tires going longer. Like, that's what it is, right?
And I kind of thought that was always just sort of like mystical, not nonsense, but like, these guys have extrasensory perception, right? But with that, by doing that, it was like I doubled the amount of feedback that I was getting.
Oh, that's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Were you wearing leathers and a helmet and everything?
So
obviously?
they gave you like motorcycle jackets,
okay.
and then they told you to wear jeans. But they did give us helmets and balaclavas and gloves.
Was it the one thing I would worry about is, did you stay cool enough, because you're in Sonoma wearing leathers in?
It was So it was going to be a hot day, but thankfully the wind kept
cool.
things a little cool, so it wasn't so bad. I did get blue flagged a number of times.
Okay.
So we weren't racing each other. We were all just kind of doing time trial stuff. And one time they told you to always move to the left, just by virtue of like where the passing zones were on the track.
Is it a clockwise track, presumably?
Yes. But my instinct was always to go off the racing line.
Right.
And so one time I moved to the right, which was the
right.
wrong thing to do. But thankfully
That's funny.
nothing happened. I one time forgot to brake. Like, I just got in the zone and like
Right.
overthought it, and then had to mash on the brake to stop, and I spun.
Awesome.
Which is embarrassing, but it didn't collect anything. Although on the penultimate lap of the entire day, I spun in the same spot and hit a cone. So they have cones around to tell you like where the turn-in point is, and for braking distance, which was really cool, because like every time I would like leave it later and later and see how long I could do it. So I hit a cone, and I thought, well, maybe they won't know it was me. They'll see a cone was missing, but like, no one will know. And then I pull into the pit, and the cone is lodged in my cart. I had taken it around the rest of the lap.
That's awesome. You're like, whoops.
Yeah. It was so much fun.
Oh, that's excellent.
If you have the means and the facilities, I really recommend it. It was great.
Hell yeah. Okay. I'm gonna think about that for sure. That sounds
Yeah, I mean,
fun.
you're right there.
Yeah, it's just down the road. I knew they had that kart thing. We parked beside it, I think, when we went last year to NASCAR, or maybe to Lemons. I forget. I think because it's up on the hill, right? It's up above the track. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know they did like school. I guess I knew they did like corporate, team building-y stuff, and you could get a group together. Because I think they tried to get us to do it, didn't they? When we went to 24 Hour of Lemons, or when we went, no, I went to Lemons, but we went to NASCAR, I think, or something like that. Maybe it was when I was at Lemons. They were like, "Hey, do you want to go do the because they're like, you're just going to be hanging around here all day." But I didn't know they did that. That's awesome. Hell yeah.
It's really cool.
Very cool.
Let me run down the standings here before we kick off. Driver standings: Max Verstappen is on top, 277 points. By the way, to Perez, that is 146 points away.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Norris is in second with 199. Leclerc in third with 177. Piastri in fourth with 167. Sainz in fifth with 162. Lewis Hamilton in sixth with 150. Perez in seventh with 131. George Russell in eighth with 116. Alonso is ninth with 49. Stroll has 24 in 10th. And we've got Hülkenberg and Tsunoda both with 22 points. Ricciardo's got 12. Ollie Behrman is down in there in 14th place with 6 points, tied with Pierre Gasly. Magnussen is in 16th with 5 points, tied with Ocon. Albon has 4, and then Zhou, Sargent, and Bottas all have 0. In the constructor standings, Red Bull Racing is on top with 408 points. McLaren's in second with 366. Ferrari in third with 345. Mercedes is in fourth with 266. Aston Martin in fifth with 73. RB has 34. Gene Haas and team have 27. Alpine's got 11. Williams has 4. And Sauber has 0. If you'd like to join the standings yourself, now's a great time. It is the middle of the season, so get in there. This is the podium from what did I mention what it was? It's the official Shift+F1 Fantasy League. The podium
if you
from
have fantasies in general, just, fantasies are cool. Have some fantasies.
just fantasize.
Yeah.
The Belgian Grand Prix, the podium looks like this. In third place, Hornet 54. In second place, Smooth Operators with a TSU for smooth.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I got it.
And in first, Manholio.
He needs GP for his bunghole. Jean-Pierre Lambiase.
That's very good. And overall, though, the standings look like this. In third place, Hoster Class in Motion. Second place, RBs, We Have the Meats. And in first, The Fast of Us Part 2.
Good stuff.
You can also send us an email, shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails, or hit us up on the socials using the link in the show notes. Danny, have we retired the book, or does the book still live?
The book still lives. There's a good one. These ones are funny.
All right.
Well, funny. I guess one of them depends how much you dislike Jos Verstappen.
Do you like a good death?
Do you like a near death for someone who might be a bad dad? Well, don't worry. I've got you covered. Today, July.
Is today the day?
Today's the day,
photo?
my friend. Get your marshmallows ready, folks. Dutch driver Jos Verstappen was always one of the most well-supported by his many fans when he was in F1. Today in 1994 at the German Grand Prix, Jos was caught up in a big fire while driving for Benetton. He came in for his first pit stop, and the crew went to connect the fuel hose, but fuel sprayed all over the car, including into his helmet.
As he know more about Jos, do we think this was an accident?
As he had just opened his visor. I did not know that.
I didn't know that.
That's grim. A split second later, the car was engulfed in flames, and marshals and pit crews raced in to put the fire out, but Jos the boss and some of the mechanics were treated for minor burns. So, yes, I'm glad Jos Verstappen's okay.
He could have been Jos's toast.
Jos. Jesus. All right. On this day in 2007, triple world champion Nelson Piquet was ordered to attend a driving awareness school after losing his license for repeatedly speeding and parking offenses. His wife Viviane was also ordered to attend the course. We're going to make good use of this course and learn something, he said graciously.
I thought it was going to be sensitivity training. But then I was like, no, back in his day, it was fine.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. There you go.
I posted the Jos Verstappen photo and video in a previous episode, but I'll repost them in the show notes.
It might have been last week. Was it last week?
No, it was July 3rd.
Okay, yeah. It was the original Phoenix, if you will.
Sure, yeah. All right, well, final thoughts ahead of the F1 summer break, Danny?
Yeah, what a weird season. Like, the first chapter of it, we were reading its obituary. It just felt like a fallow year as we trundle towards the 2026 regulations, hoping, dreaming for something new. And yeah, it's such a weird one. Like, not only have we seen McLaren have this resurgence, we've seen Ferrari oddly sort of stumble and fall back. Now Mercedes, who seemed like they were completely swimming in the middle of nowhere, are having a bit of a surge too. Yeah, I am done predicting things. I'm just going to read from my little book of death and be happy.
Final thoughts, Rob?
Two things about just radio stuff. One, did you notice how good Max and GP were being to each other? It was like if last week was like being caught watching a couple have like a knockdown drag out in front of you, this was like, would you like this, sweetie? Would this be good?
Let me get that door.
What do you think about this? Lots of like, hey, let's be super courteous and polite with each other. The other thing is, and this I do think, McLaren have cleaned up their comms. I noticed this during qualifying. Their radio messages now follow a pretty strict template of like state of play, option 1, option 2, team recommendation, clear binary decision offered to the driver. Like it does appear in the wake of some of the breakdowns they've had and just some of the weirdness with like comms with Norris. They have really made an effort to be like, we still want decisions to sit with the driver, but we need to stop just having sort of chin stroking. Like, I don't know, what's you feeling it, man? What do you think we should do? It turns out that is not going to generate a good race strategy during an F1 lap.
Man, all right, well. Stay strong through the summer break, everybody. If you're a patron, we will, of course, have a bonus episode for you. And we'll be back ahead of the Zandvoort race, of course, with our pre-race show. But until then, if you would like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift+F1 Discord, which is banging, by the way. It is. Stuff's always popping off in there. I like to hang out in the meme channel. I'm not afraid to admit it.
30 memes.
You can do so over at patreon.com/shiftf1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next time.